he's lost his voice, so he won't be joining us this morning. So we have a little bit of flexibility in the member meeting, but we will not drag it out. So we want to start off with welcoming our new members. We have grown. We've added quite a few new members. It's exciting. We welcome Anthony Simon, Blue, Microsoft, RTO Insider, Shadow Electric, Sense, Tennessee Valley Authority, and Veer. So we're thrilled. That's 9 new members, 8 new members, and most of those came in the last 6 months or so. So it's still echo. Is it the position of my mic or is it the UV system? Okay, you can hear me. All right. So I do want to start by thanking Gil for his leadership over the last few years. I think he would tell you that some of the things that he's most excited about were some changes in governance that we instituted. We redid our bylaws. We really sort of institutionalized some of our board committees. And we have worked to increase membership and to start building a reserve for our budget. So he's really put us on a new track in terms of the structure of our organization. And I'm going to turn it over to Richie to talk through our new board members and our outgoing board members.
Thank you. We'll start with our outgoing board members, and I'll just note them by name, but Rob Wilhite, sitting here, has served as our membership chair on our executive committee for many years, and we are sad to see him go, but again, we will keep Black and Veatch and the team well engaged. Likewise, for Carrick Johnson, Velco has been our governance chair most recently, and Lee Cravat as chair of our operating committee. So there are lots of committee leadership positions that will be opening up that we're excited to be filling with our current and incoming board members. Dan Pfeiffer, who is on our policy co-chairs of ITRON, will be rotating off. Michelle Tiami did so just recently after switching from electric power to back to DNV. And Wade Troxel, moving on from Platte River Power Authority, will also rotate off the board. But again, we will keep everybody well engaged through a bunch of different activities that we'll talk about shortly. And then just to mention, over the course of the last few months, we did a call to members for nominations to serve on the board. We had a slate that was approved by the board in November, and then it went out to membership. Everyone voted. There was a 100% approval rating for this slate. So we really want to welcome Astrid Atkinson, CEO and co-founder of KMU Energy, a new member. Michelle Blaze, SVP of Engineering and Project Management at ComEd. Russell Boyer, Global Energy Field Director at Dell Technologies, who is here this morning. Michelle Fay, welcome. Speaker yesterday, a partner at Guidehouse. Mark Gabriel, sitting up front here. President and CEO of United Power. And Hannah Green, Worldwide Power and Utilities Leader at Microsoft. Wade Lauer, SVP of Transmission North America from Siemens. And then I saw him yesterday. Deepa Paduval, Global Advisory Lead and SVP at Black and Veatch. We're glad to have her. And Jeannie Salo, VP of Government Relations from Schneider Electric. Welcome. So we're really looking forward to a bunch of new voices and new perspectives on the board. That makes a total of 25 board members, which is the largest board that GridWise has had, at least in my recent memory. And so there'll be a lot of really good perspectives to guide this group. And I think we want to get more conversation in this meeting here, but I think we're looking forward to welcoming all of them and starting next year.
And we should say that Gil will be staying on in his role as chair until January, and then we will have an announcement about a new chair at that point after the executive committee and the board approve that. So stay tuned for an exciting new opportunity. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did in 2022, and then Malaika is going to talk about the strategic plan that we embarked on this year, which is one of our big activities following on the work that we did to restructure the board and to institute some changes in our bylaws. We then sort of looked ahead at what is coming at the industry, what's coming at GridWise, what's happening, over the next 5 years or so, and then sought to develop a strategic plan to align the outside environment with our goals and mission. So I'm going to let Malaika talk about that. But in addition to the strategic planning work that we've been doing for the last 5 or 6 months or so, we spent a significant amount of time interfacing with mainly the federal agencies who've been charged with implementing the infrastructure bill, with a significant amount of comments and documents and interactions with different offices within the Department of Energy, but also with the Department of Commerce and the Department of Transportation as well. And that will continue into 2023, but it was a significant part of our work. And we want to thank all of our members because we didn't do it alone. I mean, each of these sets of comments were put together by working groups that reviewed and provided input and really provided the insights that we then passed on to the Department of Energy. And I will note that in yesterday morning's address by Maria Robinson at the Department of Energy, it's clear that either she or her staff had read some of our comments because there were exact phrases from our comments in her remarks. So I was excited to pick up on those things. I also testified in front of the House Climate Committee on grid resilience and reliability, and what I loved about that request was that I had testified in front of them before, but this time around, they specifically asked us for examples of things that our members were doing to build and enhance resilience on the grid. So we went out to our members, asked for input, and got lots of great examples to provide back to the members, and then I did hear members make reference to those examples in their own words when they were giving remarks and asking questions. So what you provide to us actually does get to the outside world of policymakers and does make a difference. We also put out 2 reports that are a continuation of our new, our biggest projects. We put out, as we've mentioned several times, the paper on near-term grid investments for integrating electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So we were asked by Pat Hoffman at the last GridCONNEXT, what are the investments and technologies that would be no regrets technologies to set the path to supporting accelerated transportation electrification. And that we consider part of our technology portfolio series, and we're going to build on that in 2023. And we also thought a little differently about the Grid Modernization Index. We put out, rather than a single report that had a set of variables at the back that kind of was in the index that contributed to the ranking of the states, we thought, if you are a state and you'd like to improve your ranking, what kinds of questions would you ask yourself? And so we created the Grid Modernization Index Readiness Framework, which is a whole series of questions around the kinds of grid functions that we expect from a modern grid. It's kind of a self-assessment tool. It's a standalone product that can be used by utilities, by outside advocates, by the states to kind of, think through what are the elements of grid modernization and what progress have you made there. Now we have that readiness framework. We're going to embark on a significant data collection effort. We anticipate that this year's data collection effort will be much deeper and more comprehensive than has been done in the past. It's going to be more expensive, and therefore we won't start it until we've actually done a serious amount of fundraising for it. We are happy, very excited to be working with Black & Veatch after a competitive process that our board helped us with to develop a proposal that is going to produce not only the final Grid Modernization Index report, but also a set of data that in and of itself has standalone value. So we'll have 3 products with Grid Modernization Index now: the readiness framework, a set of data that can be used as a baseline for this massive amount of federal funding that's going to go out into the states and industry for grid modernization. That can be a baseline that we look at over the years to see what the impact of that funding has been, and then the report. So those are kind of some of the highlights of the things that we were doing in 2022 that will bleed into 2023. And with that, I'm going to turn to Malaika and have her talk about our strategic planning exercise.
Good morning. I'm Malaika Walton, and I know you've seen Kara and Richie up here a lot. I've been out at the front. I'm the Membership and Programs Director for GridWise Alliance, so I know I've spoken with many of you, but in case you don't know who I am, that is my role. And also within that, I have been guiding with the help of a facilitator our strategic planning process. And our first slide here shows our GridWise, about GridWise, who we are, and our core message. And that was launched last year in 2021. We did actually show it at the meeting last year when I was looking back at my notes, but that also started us in the strategic planning process that we engaged in this year, because it gave us a focus of who we are and then how are we going to do that work for the next 3 years, starting in 2023, by the way. And so the process has been that we engaged a facilitator, Cecilia Sepp. Several of you met with her. And she did board surveys and interviews that included a meeting that we had in June with the board, an in-person meeting with the board, where she was able to go through a facilitated discussion. And then we followed up with a survey, and then she's interviewed some board members over that time. She also did a full member survey, and we thank you and any of your colleagues who may have filled that out. We did stakeholder interviews as well. So she was given a list of non-members who are in our space from Department of Energy, other energy associations. I can't even remember.
Congressional staff, neighborhood Nazio.
So she conducted those interviews as well. And then in October, we had a series of meetings with our current board members, and we tried to organize it via committee. Didn't quite work out with everybody's schedule, but we were able to talk with most board members during the month of October about some specific goals for GridWise for the next 3 years. And so now we're in the process, we've taken all of that information, and staff has kind of reviewed it. We're refining some of those goals, and in fact, in just a few minutes, we'll present to you where we are, our 3 primary goals. And we're going to be going back to the board very shortly with, these are what we propose. This is Cecilia's report that she's done on all the research that she's done. So that in January we can move to approving the strategic plan in January, and with our specific plans for the year as well as the budget. Did I? Oh, I got to speak over here for the mic.
You got it.
Yeah. So I just wanted to go over some of the things that Cecilia had highlighted. I think we were all pleasantly, not surprised, but pleasantly welcomed the strong perception of GridWise Alliance in all of the interviews that she did here. That GridWise is a successful advocate for what our stated mission is, which was really important, representing our members. And again, this is a really diverse membership, so there was positive perception of GridWise representation of members. That our research was appreciated, that our focus on grid modernization was appreciated in terms of our searching for solutions and best practices, policies. We are a trusted convener. I also have integrity and credible down at the bottom, but that came out a lot, that people trusted GridWise to bring together its members and other stakeholders. Some of the opportunities that I highlight there, and that also leads us into our goals, is continuing to define clarity around grid modernization and discussion. So in the feedback that Cecilia received, was that there was more that GridWise could do to define grid modernization in the space of that discussion, to increase communication at the state level as well as the federal. So there was a continuing theme of trying to engage a little bit more at the state level in terms of the IIJA implementation, as we've been talking about, as well as grid modernization. And making sure we have broad contacts outside of federal government. Outside of DOE in the federal government. And we've started to do some of that, and again, a big push, big opportunity. This fourth one, understanding evolving consumer patterns and utilizing modern technology for fully transitioning to clean energy. That was mentioned in a couple different ways when I was looking at the report, but it's basically continuing as a community, I think, and that's really for us as a community to be thinking about how we continue to respond to where consumers are and the technologies and policies and within our member companies to respond to how the consumers are using electricity. And there seems to be a lot more opportunity there. I'm going to move on now to what our goals are. So we have 3 high-level goals, and I put them in a simple explanation without a fancy sentence is thought leadership, the grid ecosystem community, and a goal for GridWise leadership is stewardship of the organization. With thought leadership, what we have the sentence there that's the GridWise will expand its influence as a thought leader articulating the benefits of grid modernization. We do that already, and the push and the feedback is just continue to do it and do it more and continue to be strong in that leadership. And so we'll be developing some strategies. I'll go through those a little bit more of what that looked like. In the grid ecosystem community, there's discussion amongst our members, amongst our board members of recognizing that there are more players in the grid ecosystem. For example, we had a discussion about fleets yesterday and management of fleets. And so are we, is this bringing in more transportation companies into our membership, and how do we go about doing that? So the GridWise will broaden its member community and also stakeholder community as well. And then stewardship is, as it says there, GridWise will steer the organization towards long-term stability, which is both a financial and a governance and leadership task. So some of the strategies that we're talking about right now in terms of thought leadership are on the next slide. Just as a background, we are recording this, and we'll be able to send all this information out to members too for you to peruse a little bit more. The strategies that we were developing under thought leadership and that came up under discussion with the board is to be a leader in data collection for grid modernization. That speaks to GMI, to act as a facilitator of grid modernization implementation. So that speaks to convening, to the spreading of knowledge about policies, practices, technologies. And the other two, the build the reputation of GridWise, similar theme, and then lead the development of policies and implementation strategies for reliability, resilience, and decarbonization. So all of those speak to data, speaks to research. Sure, go ahead. If you have a question right now, go ahead. Please ask.
I just was thinking on the policies and implementation strategies, reliability, resilience, and decarbonization. One of the things I really loved about yesterday was the emphasis on digitization. I'm assuming that's part of it, but is there a specific stream?
We'd love to get your comment on the microphone.
Yeah, sorry. So I was mentioning, I love the focus on reliability, resilience, and decarbonization, but I loved the emphasis yesterday on digitization, and wonder if that could be another word in the mix there, like focus on the value of digitization.
Don't we have digital in our mission? We use the word as a digital grid, because for me, digitalization is a process that supports and accelerates and allows for decarbonization, better resilience and reliability. So I think don't we have a digital?
We
used to have digital.
But through our discussion, an advanced digital economy, we had that at one point in our mission statement. And then the discussion was, as we went through that process in 2021 was that, well, we're already a digital economy. So why are we stating that we're moving towards that? And so that's why the word maybe came out, but it could still, that's a good point. Let's try and keep it in some of our strategies and what we're not advocating for, what we're producing. Yeah.
You will see a big theme, like when we do our policy council meetings, when we do our technology council meetings, you'll see a big theme about, digitalization. So whether it's data analytics, whether it's the cloud, whether it's, digital substations, it's just something that we talk about a lot, but it's almost, for me, a means to an end.
It's good. It is a knowledge gap.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought in terms of thought leadership, there would be a lot of value add there. And you're doing it, so.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I just misspoke. The core message, a modern grid is a critical infrastructure component of a decarbonized advanced digital economy.
Right.
So rather than
core
moving
message.
there, we're just saying we're there, and so we need the modern grid to be the infrastructure.
Right, right.
I think, Rob, did you have a question right now? Or, oh, okay, all right. So thank you for that. And then our next goal in terms of the grid ecosystem community, broadening the member community is, as I kind of explained already, expanding the membership into a representative community reflecting all segments of the ecosystem. Did I lose myself?
Yeah, you lost your mic.
And the next one is to continue to demonstrate the relevance of the work that our members are doing to other members and to stakeholders. It's somewhat a continuation of the work that we're doing, but developing programs and publications that continue to do that and emphasize that.
And I would say, if you don't mind, part of that is relationships with our members, the way we touch our members and the way you interact with us. We've changed that a little bit this year, but we really want to do more of it next year, which is that we've asked for our members for, your key point of contact, in addition to your key point of contact, contact with your marketing and communications people, so that those people may have better access to your stories and your case studies and videos and press releases and things that we then can take. We've asked for, government relations staff so that we can incorporate them into our grid investments task force, and really trying to have multiple touch points to our members so that we can better represent you and demonstrate the relevance of your work.
And then our last goal is stewardship, long-term stability. We really want to focus on diversifying revenue streams for GridWise, as well as developing more of a kind of savings account that we can draw on for major projects. And then to build and strengthen the team that we have and thinking about long-term stability and experience that continues to represent GridWise to the broader community and to the federal government. So those are the three major goals that we have. I think we'll go ahead and talk about some projects for next year and then open it up to additional questions, comments, thoughts through the process.
Yeah, we will be continuing the focus since the infrastructure bill is a 5-year plan. We will be focusing continually on how to ensure that money that flows either through the federal agencies or through the states is used most effectively, and that the right entities understand how to access the money so that we can address the patchy nature of grid modernization across the country. So we will be both doing that with the direct interactions that we have with the states. We'll be doing that with continued partnerships with NASIO and NARUC, because we don't have the resources and the bandwidth to go state by state by state, but we have added a lot of value to NASIO's interactions with their state energy offices and with the regulators through NARUC. Our major projects are intended to actually support that work of effective funding of grid modernization. And the two big pots of activities, aside from the direct advocacy that we do, will be the Grid Modernization Index, and I already talked a bit about that. We released a framework this year. Next year will be the data collection and the release of the report. And then the Technology Portfolio Initiative, which we started in late 2021, is something that we envision longer term. We are going to build out an interactive website as an educational tool, and also as sort of developing graphics and things that we can use in presentations and other things, which will be available for all of our members to use as well, that really sort of lays out what the key components of the grid are. And then we released a paper that kind of laid out the function of the technological functions of a modern grid, and then what kinds of technologies might provide some of those functions. And then what we're going to do, as I've mentioned it yesterday, is kind of continually put out papers that look at what the technologies have to be deployed on the grid in order to meet certain policy goals. So that we know that technologies have multiple purposes on the grid, but for policymakers, sometimes it's hard for them to envision what the technologies have to be in order to realize those policy goals. And so we're kind of slicing the technology portfolio into these goals. So the first one was transportation electrification. We're currently doing one on FERC Order 2222. We'd like to do one on the grid technologies that enhance resilience. And these can be, they're stakeholder education tools, both at the federal level, but at the state level as well, both for us, but also for our members. We will never intervene directly in a rate case, for example. But we hope that these documents will provide useful ways to have conversations with regulators and others at the state and local level to help support your efforts to get funding for grid modernization. We currently have an opening for a policy director. Our wonderful policy director, Aurora Eadington, is now at the Massachusetts Energy Office as their director of grid policy. So we are looking for another policy director. But what we were able to do after changing the bylaws were to be able to convene working groups without going to the board for asking for permission. So we have, to great effect, I think, convened our experts in our members to help us produce the documents and the reports and things that we've been doing, and so a policy director will only enhance that ability, but that's an open position that we're looking to, so if you've got any recommendations, we would love to have them, and I'll turn it to you to see if you've got any other additional comments on activities for 2023.
I mean, I think that really covers it. I think we've hit upon those. I had some really good conversations just yesterday at the technology showcase that we did last night that was a really good way for GridWise to meet new people within our membership and within the groups that participate most directly with us. So just in that, I had conversations with EPRI about the FERC 2222 and a lot of work that they've done. So I think when you see these kind of opportunities that are coming, I think the goal for us is not to repeat a lot of work, but to augment and to use a lot of resources that are already out there. So I think that's another way of not just bringing in your teams, but also your expertise that's already out there, helping us kind of bring in these messages so that we can compile them and synthesize them down and make them kind of new again, and then add our flavor to it. And I think that's kind of what we're looking to do as far as content building next year. So no, I think that covers it. We'd love to take some questions, I know, and have about 10 minutes before 9 o'clock. Is it 8:50 or so? So I think we'd open up.
I was going to add one thing in terms of a strategic plan that I forgot to mention is emphasize again, it's 2023 to 2025 is what we've been talking about for sure. One of the things that we talked about as well is not just, there's been a lot of focus in the next couple of years on IIJA implementation, but one of the things that we might not focus on as much in 2023, but certainly by 2024 is what's next. And how we begin to prepare ourselves as an organization, as a membership organization, for the IIJA monies have been distributed and implementations on the way, but where's the grid going next, and making sure that we're positioning and leading our members out direction as well. So.
Mona? Yeah, I was just going to say. Here, have a microphone.
Mike is coming. Yeah, if you're going to raise your hand if you have a comment after Mona too, so we know where to go.
So first of all, thank you for the banner work on all of the federal agency outreach and comments. I think we have submitted 5-6 sets of comments this year.
And one yesterday morning while I was sitting here.
I still have to review that.
You saw that.
I know it's in the back of the mind. I still have to review one. I'm thinking about the really great work with NASIO and NARUC that's been done, and whether there are other state-based organizations that are a little bit more local, because I think the messages around digitalization and resiliency, while they're understood at the state energy office level and some of the regulators, the folks that sometimes set policy or are going to be funding programs and concept papers and IIJA funding, they still do not have kind of a grid modernization 101. And I'm open to others who work more at the state level, but I'm thinking about like an NCSL or a CSG or Council of Mayors. Obviously, we don't need to take on all of them, but if we can triage and figure out what is just one local organization that we can make more inroads, and it could just be like a briefing, you know, something that for you, Karen, is like off the top of your head, you know, but they may not be aware. And I just think for IIJ, that's going to become more and more important. So that was one thing I was hoping maybe in 2023 we could focus on.
Yeah, that's great. We appreciate that. One thing I didn't mention we did in 2022, which was really successful, is that these state groups are talking to each other. So NARUC and NASIO now have a permanent, and this just started recently, which is crazy, but NARUC and NASIO now have a permanent committee where they jointly look at efforts, and they'll form a task group and put out reports. They have started talking to AASHTO, which is the State Association for the Departments of Transportation, and they have regular meetings as well on the NEVI, the EV charging infrastructure money at the Department of Transportation. We held a workshop with our members. Some of you participated in that with the NARUC, NASIO, and AASHTO groups. That's the first time they had actually heard from the utilities and the equipment vendors themselves as part of these conversations. So we have a set of things that came out of that we think that they're going to continue to have those conversations, but there are a few things that we think that GridWise can uniquely contribute to. So we'll look to 2023 to have another one of those workshops. But they're also busy. You know, we talked to NASIO, and they're going to be part of our roundtable this afternoon. When we first started calling it a workshop, they said, whoa, we don't have the bandwidth for a workshop, because they are so focused on this money. So when we have the workshop this afternoon, we'll have NASIO, we'll have the National Governors Association, we'll have NARUC, we'll have a commissioner. We're going to ask them what will be most useful for us to do, which will help inform the strategic plan and how we go forward with those groups. But we do not have somebody from NCSL or what was the other, Council of Mayors, which I have actually found pretty difficult to work with.
Yeah, I thought Council of Mayors had like a dedicated P3 or, you know, like innovation type of group, but I've heard that sometimes the more technical state groups are the way to go. So, but AASHTO's a really good one because they are looking at the NEVI
And they will be
funding.
here this afternoon.
Yeah, I saw that. That was great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Other comments, questions, suggestions? We nailed it. Yeah, Mona.
Mona's going again.
So this is more of a question around oversight of IIJA. So I think testifying before Congress is important, and I'm curious whether, especially around GRIP, there's going to be any oversight hearings or anything, and you think it's worthwhile for GridWise to be feeding into that process, because we all know that it's going to be a little bit of a choppy ride.
Yeah, so I have thought about that, and I think that notwithstanding politics or party affiliation, I think that the Senate is more likely to have constructive oversight. And I've already talked to Manchin staff. They were so busy with IIJA, and then with IRA, and then with the kind of behind-the-scenes negotiations and writing of the permitting reform bill, that they said to me, oh, we haven't done much oversight yet. Well, there hasn't been a lot of oversight. There hasn't been a lot to look at yet, because DOE is just starting to get that GRIP money out. But I do think the Senate Democrats are as interested as the Republicans will be in how the money is going to move and what's happening at the agencies. But I think that the House is going to be a lot of gotcha, and I don't think we want to be part of that.
Okay.
They're going to look for the next Solyndra. So
I'm done.
see Larry.
Yeah, Karen, maybe to add on to that, I know last week in the discussions with DOE, there's a lot of concern about metrics and how do we know we're getting better? And it feels like from this organization even, some sort of, and again, it could be back to the technical papers, but how do we represent that the funds are being used, that they're I know DOE is struggling with that now, so anything that we can do to assist in that, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Larry. And yesterday, when I was finalizing the comments for the energy improvements in rural and remote areas, they had a question about measurements of how do you know that you're actually improving the situation? And we have we have a couple paragraphs on metrics there, but it occurred to me that it would be really useful to have had something that I could just rely on to go back to it. And I think some of our utilities have made all of our utilities have made massive investments in the grid for resilience and reliability. And you know what you're looking for when you are monitoring those impacts after time. The basic ones, SAIDI, but there's probably other ones that you use that if we put into a paper would, I think, be useful for the states and feds. So I think it's a good task for us for 2023. And it might be that some of it flows out of GMI. Other thoughts, suggestions? Well, we're wide open for discussions today, and we will be putting together some more specific tactics for 2023 that will then align with our budget. So if you're on the board, you'll be hearing more about that and more specifics in the coming month or so. So anything?
Want to announce what's next?
So what's next is, it's 9 o'clock. We are going to start at 9:30 because Congressman Latta will not be here. And we're not going to start early because that would mean we'd have to adjust the entire schedule. And things are pretty well programmed with Convene and with the schedule. So we'll start at 9:30, so that gives us more time for networking. We'll have one change in that the last panel will be an hour instead of 45 minutes, but we'll finish right at 12:30 as planned. We'll go to lunch, and then we'll have this roundtable with both Department of Energy and some state officials and some of our members, and we're hoping that it is a conversation with the broader audience and this roundtable about not just what they're thinking about in terms of how to structure the funding that we're all interested in, but what we can do to help them. And that'll help us, again, inform our strategic plan for 2023 and beyond. So any other thoughts, questions? Okay, with that, we will adjourn the annual meeting of the members, and we'll talk again at 9:30. So thank you.
Thank you.